Well, hello and welcome to Pick Up the Mic, Harvest Church's almost only official podcast. We might have a new one soon. Drum roll, please. You'll just have to wait and find out. My name is Mike Greiner. I'm the lead pastor at Harvest Church, and with me is Will Land, the executive pastor. And he was just screaming across the way, and it reminded me of a Tom Petty song that begins with the words, "It's just the normal noises in here." And then it goes into, I think it's Louisiana Rain. Great song. So I want to start out, let's have a little fun before we get into the Israel and seriousness stuff, because sometimes...
I gotta give a shout out.
Go ahead.
I gotta give a shout out to my boys Matt and Jesse. You know who you are. I'm wearing my new
Born in Idaho
Exo Mountain shirt.
Can they see that with the computer
they
in the way?
probably can't.
We should put...
But if you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
If you know, you know. Born in Idaho. Anyway, that's a shout out to a couple boys.
Idaho. I ain't a hoe. So I don't know if we got to bleep that out. But listen, you know the Babylon Bee, don't you?
Yes.
Have you seen the woke video, the woke Jesus video?
No, of course not. Yes, actually, yes, I have.
We're going to show you from
Somebody
the Babylon Bee the
hilarious.
woke Jesus video, but for a purpose. Because sometimes Babylon Bee prophesies the future.
Well, and I also just want to, because I'm sure that not everybody knows the Babylon Bee. So just for some context, the Babylon Bee is like a joke.
Satire.
Yeah, a satirical.
It's Christian satire,
news
actually.
Website. So it's fake. They're fake news stories that are jokes, satirical. And our actual current reality has gotten so ridiculous that they had to come up with a news site called Not the Babylon Bee.
That's right.
Which is real news stories that just are so absurd on their face that it almost seems like they're satire. And so they had to make a separate site to say this isn't satire. This is just how ridiculous.
That's right.
Things are getting.
And many of the things they said have come
true.
But they call themselves fake news you can trust.
Fake news you can trust. I like
and by the way, like
they're very funny.
I just pulled it up in their headline today. You hear that this Muslim guy got the Democrat nomination for New York City mayor?
No.
Yeah, he's going to be the Democrat nominee, and he's also a socialist. And his name's Mamdani. It says Mamdani vows to knock down World Trade Center to build more affordable housing. So he's knocked him down before. He's going to knock him down again. Okay, whenever you're ready, hit it, sunshine, and we're going to take a look at this video.
That's a multi-layered joke.
It really is good. It really is good. So, well, while Sunshine is getting that ready, we do have to talk a little bit about Israel today. And since we last made a recording, and now it'll be 3 weeks in the rearview mirror, I remember the last recording, I said, by this time, for all we know, we'll have bombed Israel. And
it happened. We didn't bomb Israel.
Or no, I mean bombed Iran.
We bombed Iran.
I can't tell you how long I've been waiting for that. This is not a pastoral point, and you don't have to agree with me. I, personally as an American, have been wanting us to bomb Iran since 1979.
Well, almost every president since Clinton, bipartisan, left Democratic and Republican, has vowed and promised to not let Iran
have a nuclear
develop
weapon.
a nuclear weapon. Just promise after promise after promise.
And they haven't done it. Well, they've let it continue. Well, in 1979, I was 16 years old. And 15 and 16. I turned 16 that year. And that is when the guy named the Shah of Iran was overthrown. So Iran had a secular government, a non-religious government. And they had a student movement on their colleges to try to Islamize their country. And this was used to put what we would call mullahs in control. Mullahs would be Islamic clerics who run things.
Like Pharisees.
Yes, with power, though, like kings. And so they set up, they had a revolution and set up an Islamic regime. And the first thing they did was they took all the Americans in our embassy hostage. I think there were 50-something of them. I can't remember. They kept them hostage for over 400 days. And it was at that time that the song by the Beach Boys, which was Barbara Ann, Ba 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 Barbara Ann, ba 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 Barbara Ann. That was changed then to bomb 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 Iran, bomb bomb bomb, and now it's being played again. But that was from 1979. And also Mickey Mouse was a meme back when Disney was thought to be American, and you'd see on bumper stickers Mickey Mouse giving the finger, which was very rude in 1979 to have. But people would put on their car, and it would say, "Hey Iran," and it would have Mickey Mouse giving the finger. There was a lot of anger, and it was the first time we saw on our TV screens Muslims beating their backs with whips and chains, walking the streets and saying Allah Akbar and death to America. And it was shocking. And we were all offended as a country, and we wanted Jimmy Carter to do something. But he was such a wimp. Many people think is responsible for not stopping the revolution by not supporting the Shah of Iran. And so he was wimpy. He did eventually, because it was so hard on his presidency, try to rescue those guys by sending in helicopters with commandos. And somehow he managed to crash all the helicopters in the desert. I don't know how you do that, but he did it. I don't know if someone got inside and sabotaged or whatever, but he literally crashed our own guys in the desert, so we looked really weak. And America was ready to go. We wanted to take down Iran. And it no doubt led to a contributing factor to Reagan coming in, because Reagan came in and he said, we're not going to put up with this crap.
Yeah, there's a lot of contributing factors to Reagan coming in.
But that was it's
you
forgotten.
could just say Jimmy Carter was the contributing factor.
You can, but it was forgotten by a lot of Americans. Those of us who lived through it, the military was on our mind, because at that time they made a lot of fun of the military, but now all of a sudden we wanted the military. And then Reagan said, we're going to put an end to this. He gets elected, and before he's inaugurated, they let all the hostages go. And right after that, Top Gun comes out, right? And then right after that, Charlie Daniels writes the song "In America" and says, "You didn't realize that we'd get together again, right? That we'd all get together again." That all had a context. Sean Hannity plays that song, but it came out, and I live that context. And the doggone Iranians have been trying to kill us ever since. They killed a bunch of our Marines, and now you got all these diaper babies who think they're conservatives, who think that all war is what happened in Afghanistan, and they're going, we shouldn't do anything. We shouldn't do anything. And when I heard we bombed Iran, I was like, yes. I was Saturday night. I was so happy. Anyway, we'll get back to that happy thing in a minute. But first, I think we're ready. We ready to go, Sunshine? Okay, so here's our woke Jesus.
If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn it off with the other also. Unless they're a Republican. Then you can feel free to punch them in the face.
Again, he blows those pronouns.
Let the children come unto me, and do not hinder them.
He's woke.
Unless they might be born into poverty. Or they might be an inconvenience to your party lifestyle. In that case, feel free to murder them in the womb. Haven't you read that in the beginning, God created them male and female, and genderqueer, femboy, trans man, trans woman, two-spirit. You have heard that it was said,
Two-spirit.
hate your enemies. But I say to you, this is correct. And here's a handy little chart to help you understand who your enemy is, based on Marxist intersectionality theory.
As the Lord was setting out on a journey, a certain young man approached him.
Oh, my Lord, what must I do to be saved?
Be less white.
But the man went away sad, for he was very white.
No help in that
My
guy.
Lord, if you had been here, my brother Lazarus would not have died.
Do not be afraid. But Lazarus will live again through this mail-in ballot.
Look at her blanket. Does not look Hebrew.
By gender, Non-binary, demi-boy,
Demi-boy.
omnigender, pangender, xenogender. Someone who identifies as a large ornate building. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except by reducing their carbon footprint and getting vaccinated 12 times. Like me. Cancel your enemies. Curse those who bless you. And burn down the whole country if you don't get your way. Tater-tot gender, ghost boy, tri-spirit, weather gender, transfemme, polyfluid, dolphin man, yodel boy, Goomba sexual.
It's a miracle. Jesus has multiplied the fish and the loaves.
No, my son. I've merely stolen it from that village over there. It's called wealth redistribution. Pretty sweet, huh?
Nice.
Pretty sweet.
Nice. He
Would
goes,
you like to be healed, my son?
Yes, of course, Jesus. Thank you. Thank you.
Then fear not. For I have supported a new healthcare bill that will force you to buy insurance. Because I am a good person. By this, they will know that you are my disciples. If you have one of these yard signs, or you wear a Ukraine pin, or you put one of these human rights campaign stickers on your camel. Here, take one. Super sticky.
super sticky for the camel.
Poor you will always have with you. This is because of capitalism. Eat the rich. 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 Eat the
Wait,
rich.
it's not done yet. It's not done yet.
Infiniqueer. Barista queer. Cocaine bear gender. Marvel sexual. Hyperqueer. Hedgehog brony. And last but not least, bi-curious demi-gherkin.
What about Shrek gendered?
Oh, yes. Shrek gendered too, yeah. Whatever you guys want. Make them all up.
Make
Fine.
Make them
The
all
church
up.
is under attack.
Okay, that's
Marxist
enough.
ideology and wokeism are attempting
So
to hijack
that
the
is
gospel message.
Jesus, woke Jesus. It shouldn't be a real thing.
Cocaine bear gender.
Cocaine bear queer. What is it? Yes. The so then today I got to see a pastorette, a preacherette, from I don't even know who, MCC. What the heck is MCC? Methodist.
Beats me.
Okay. So this preacherette, I watched it because I guess I was a glutton for punishment, and tell me if it doesn't sound a little bit like the Babylon Bee. This is a real. It's not a real church, but they think they are.
Yeah, well, yeah, they would say they are.
So whenever you're ready, Sunshine, just hit.
Oh, I'm interested. It's gonna hurt
hit
my
our-
feelings. I
This,
think.
well, no, it's just gonna make you cringe to think that there's.
Spirit of God always speaks our language, our first language, our heart language, the one we learned at our mother's breast.
Not one with words.
The one in which we first knew love and longing and resistance and hope. For instance, if you learned about the unconditional love of God in a drag show or on a dance floor or through some chosen family, she speaks that too.
God
And
is
if
she.
you encountered the holy in a fierce protest chant or in the quiet coming out to yourself in your bedroom mirror, that is holy language, and that's Pentecost, and the Spirit speaks through that.
You look in the mirror and
The
say,
Spirit
"I'm
speaks
gay."
through the pages of Scripture and through the poetry of of Audre Lorde and the lyrics of Leonard Cohen, through the novels of Margaret Atwood and the sermons of black womanist preachers and indigenous Two-Spirit elders. And the Spirit of God speaks through all those who refuse to be silent. That would be us, wouldn't it? We are a holy, noisy people. Amen? Okay, so Pentecost is not about conformity. It's about queer multiplicity, a celebration of a diversity of voices and experiences and journeys and identities that all together make up the body of Christ.
Okay. The Babylon Bee thing is like 2 years old.
Metropolitan Community Church is what MCC is.
Oh, they're a gay church. So, okay, got it. So that's a gay church. So, obviously, this is a real thing to some people, and just because someone says they're a church doesn't mean they are. That was just horrible. But she used Two-Spirit right in there.
Indigenous Two-Spirit elders.
Yes, indigenous
I think
Two-Spirit.
is what it says.
I wonder what a Two-Spirit is. Anyway, let's get back to Israel. I want to talk a little. Actually, let's.
That was just to make us sad for the day.
I thought, just to show you that's out there. So last time we talked about does Israel replace the church?
Does the church replace Israel?
And that's a very nuanced conversation, no doubt. If people are very into the conversation, if they heard us, they would say that we got it wrong. Oh, by the way, I'm supposed to tell you to smash that like button and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and share and comment.
All the above.
All the above. So, so then that leads us to the application. Our answer, by the way, which was well summed up by you, Will, at the end, was go ahead. You want to do it again?
The church doesn't replace Israel. The church becomes a part of Israel. Israel has always been spiritual Israel from the Old Testament to now, except that there is still some, maybe we'll call it difficult to grasp completely, plan for the fulfillment of actual ethnic Israel, which we did a whole 2 hours.
Yeah, we're not going to redo it all.
To get to at the end of Romans 11, which we went all the way through Romans 9, 10, and 11, and in Zechariah 12, I think, you see that it's pretty hard grammatically to argue that God doesn't have some special plan to redeem the part of Israel that rejected the Messiah.
Ethnic Israel.
Yeah, and you'd have to say that's either, you said it, whether that's the majority of the population of ethnic Israel at that time, or it's the leadership of ethnic Israel
even
at that
all
time.
of them.
Yeah, or even all of them. It's the Israel as defined in the previous verse in Romans 11 that says it's the ones who rejected Jesus, and that would be ethnic Israel.
That's right. And we could even say that in the Old Testament, what you could call, I guess, the biblical Israel, many of the people are going to hell because they didn't have faith. So ethnic Israel, though, they still received the promises in the physical realm of blessings and whatnot, or cursings, as it were, because they were ethnic Jews. So that's where we ended up. If you disagree with what we just said, don't have that argument based on what we said, and don't argue with us at all, unless you go back and listen to the last podcast, and then argue with us on the basis of that. We're not going to remake it. The question is, how do we apply that today? Because Christians are torn, especially because conservative politics and, let's say, white Christianity have a way of
intertwining.
Yes, and then a lot of Johnny-come-latelys to politics think, well, maybe we're not supposed to like Israel. There's a lot of anti-Semitism flying around. And I heard one comment say that, just remember, we're not talking about biblical Israel. To which I started to think, what the heck does the term biblical Israel mean? What does that mean anyway? What is biblical Israel? The Israel in the Bible? Doesn't the Israel in the Bible emanate past the pages? I mean, if the church is the Israel of God, we're the biblical Israel. And if if Israel also has an ethnic expression, why wouldn't a bunch of Jews living in the physical land where Israel is in the Bible not be biblical Israel? So I don't even want to deal with that. As far as I'm concerned, it's as biblical Israel as anything else. we're getting a little silly. So if someone says, is the Israel today the biblical Israel? I'd say yes and no. No, it's not people from the first century and 2,000 years before that, because they're all dead. So in that sense, no. But in the sense, is it the relatives of those same people living in the same place? Yes. So therefore, let's call it biblical Israel. I have no problem with calling it that. But I'd rather not even worry about the term. It's a silly term. It almost seems to imply, well, if they're not the biblical Israel, we can go ahead and hate them. And or we don't have to have any allegiance to them. And I have difficulty with that.
So that implies then you think we should have some allegiance to them as Christians?
Well, I do think that if you look at Genesis chapter 12, it says the ones who bless him, he will bless. The ones who curses him, he will curse. That was true of ethnic Israel in the Old Testament.
Yes.
Even when they were bad.
Even when they were bad.
God sent people to punish them and then punish the people who punished them.
Yes.
Pharaoh, God hardened his heart so he could punish all those faithless Hebrews, and then he punished Pharaoh for doing it. He punished the Edomites for doing it. He punished the Babylonians from doing it.
Philistines.
Yes, even if he used them to discipline, he blesses those who bless them. And I'd say perhaps even the United States, no one's ever blessed the Jews more than the United States of America. And the United States of America is very blessed. Is that correlation or causation? I don't know. But if the Bible says those of Abraham's seed, those who bless you, I will bless. Those who curse you, I will curse. Yeah, if a bunch of Jews are living in a place called Israel and call themselves Israel, I am going to feel, honestly, a little worried about cursing them. That doesn't mean if they sin, it's not called a sin. But frankly, many people don't even realize correctly because they're only looking at right now. What has Tucker Carlson said lately? What has Candace Owens said lately? And what is my favorite anti-Semite said lately? This is nothing like the war in Afghanistan. All right, this is nothing like that.
What have they said lately?
Oh my gosh.
Well, I'm not aware because I haven't been paying attention, so I'm a good test subject because I'm sure some of our...
You don't have an X account, do you?
I do, actually.
Hit X.com and look up Candace Owens. She's just become a raging anti-Semite. Anything that Israel does is evil. There are young people saying, look, Israel's attacked... Young conservatives, Trump voters, who are saying Israel attacks everybody. They attack the Gazans. They attacked the Syrians. They attacked Hezbollah. They attack, and now they're attacking Iran. Iran didn't attack them. And just this foolishness, as if, so I think it's worth talking about the current history of Israel. Israel was not a nation for 2,000 years with a land, but they remained a people. And then in 1947, following the World War II, the UN determined to set aside the land in Israel, at least a good portion of it, to the Jews. And so it is a Zionist in the sense that if you're an ethnic Jew, this is your home. And that's annoyed people to think that ethnic Jews should have a home because they're ethnic Jews. But it is the most ancient idea we know of as far as putting an ethnic people on a land. The Semitic people, or the Jews, we know go back 2,000 years before Christ. And so and they are not exclusively Jews. They have people who live there who are Muslims. They have people who live there who are something called Druze. There are people who live there who are Christians, and they have many of them who live there as atheists. And most of the ethnic Jews are even agnostic at best. But because they're Jews, people seem to resent that and think it's racist and all these things. But in 1947, when they went back, the land of Israel was a wasteland. There was no money to be had. There was no farming to be had. It was nothing. And they've built it up quite a bit. And they also have been constantly attacked by the Arabs and other Muslims surrounding them. Constantly. If people think Israel's the aggressor, they're clueless to history. And this simple saying that I'm going to give, that's been given before by many people, prove it wrong, and I'll change my mind. If Israel were to lay down all their arms today and just demilitarize, they would be destroyed unless we came in and saved them. They would be destroyed because all the Muslims around them want them dead, and they would come in and kill them all, like they did on October 7th. That's what they want to do. But if Israel kept all their weapons, and Iran laid down all theirs, and Jordan laid down all theirs, and Syria laid down all theirs, and Egypt laid down all theirs, and Saudi Arabia laid down all theirs, and Libya laid down all theirs, and Pakistan laid down all theirs. If all the Muslims laid down all their arms, and India and Israel kept theirs, there would be peace. There would be peace. And that's just the reality. I have never heard of a more humane government in my life than Israel. Now, I'd rather be an American, but as far as humane, they go to an extreme extent to save people. If they have a hostage taken by the Palestinians, for that one hostage, they will often trade 100 people, and people who are enemies of their country, because they don't think anyone should die. They have built they have built all of the electrical and water infrastructure for the Gaza Strip and for the West Bank, and they give a ton of welfare to both those places, even though those places constantly are trying to kill them. And they've also made their land wonderful. They've made the desert flourish, and it's now a very beautiful and self-sustaining land, and they've done all the work. The Palestinians, so-called, in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, have had more money given to them as charity from the United States especially, and other nations, including Israel, that they could have built the Taj Mahal 1,000 times over. But instead, their leaders take it and they keep their people in poverty, or they spend it on guns and tunnels to kill Israel. So they're very just people. And if you don't agree with that, fine. This isn't a sermon. This is me giving my opinion as an American. I'm not reading it from the Bible. You don't have to agree with me. That's your business. But we can disagree, too. And so I think from a moral position, to not be on the side of Israel is immoral as an American. They are the more righteous nation by far. It's more free. It's more righteous. It's better to people. But they are liberals, like, let's say in the best form of the word, socialized medicine and all that crap. And but they're surrounded by people who hate them. I think the bigger question is, what's going on with Islam? And I wonder if people understand how much the Islamic people hate the Jews. And I don't mean all Muslims, but I do think we have to visit Islam first. Islam is the problem right now.
This has become our favorite podcast topic.
Well, I think it matters. And we can't stop talking about it because I think Westerners don't get it. I think they cannot get the idea that it really is a theological issue. I think some Christians will get it better than others. But all these LGBTQ queers for Palestine, they are clueless. They would be killed, but Islam will kill. They will kill. And I'm not saying all Muslims. I want to make a distinction. When I talk about Islam, I'm talking about an ideology. And I realize there are sects, S-E-C-T-S, of Islam that are peaceful, but there's not many. And I realize that most Muslims are what we could call moderate. But I also realize that the root of Islam is violent.
Yeah, and would you go out on a limb and say that moderate Muslims are only moderate due to disobedience to their scripture?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's the same as like if you would look at a liberal Christian, so the woman we just saw in Raymond's saying a bunch of weird stuff. There are people out there that say, well, that's also a representation of Christianity, and we are just of the more extreme variety.
Right.
But that's also a valid view of Christianity. It's not really a valid view of Christianity. She's being disobedient to God's word. And so if you're a Muslim and you view the Quran as God's word, you only end up in the moderate position. In fact, we would call it the liberal position. It's moderate relative to our political beliefs. It's not moderate relative to the Quran. It's liberal position. It's only out of disobedience. It's not even real.
That's right.
It's not even real Islam.
Another way to say the same thing is if you go back to the founder and behave like the founder,
you would not end up in liberal, moderate Islam.
That's right. Because a lot of people say, well, the KKK claimed to be Christian. They did claim it. But if everyone who had joined the KKK stopped doing KKK things and just acted like Jesus, they wouldn't be killing anybody. Whereas if everyone acted like Muhammad, then they would subject.
Because he killed everybody.
Yeah. Well, in fact, Muhammad, to be precise,
he was a warlord.
He began by taking his group to a place called Medina, which had a lot of Christians and a lot of Jews in it.
They originally rejected his religious pitch, if I remember correctly.
You are correct. But at the time, the scriptures he was writing, making up in his head, were saying, we can all get along.
Or getting from a demon.
Well, or getting from a demon. He said, we can be at peace. We live at peace. We're peaceful. So a Muslim will show you that. Look, it says we're a religion of peace. But as time went on, they began to reject him and challenge his claims. And so he began to become militant, and all of a sudden his scriptures and writings, it's not just the Quran, there's, was it the Hadith? They became more violent. And they said, you're not even going to bring in the paradise until all the Jews are dead and things like that. And Jews could live among us, but they had to live subjugated to us. And then he began to raise up armies to take over towns. And then he took over a huge region. But then the 4, I don't remember, caliphates or whatever that took over after him, oh my gosh, they took over way more land, and they did not discuss anything. They just burned the churches, killed the Christians, raped the women, did whatever they want to the Jews. Many Jews and Christians lived among them, and people say it was an age of peace. Not if you were one of the Jews. You lived paying half your money as a tenant farmer on what was once your own land. I guess you can call that. So they were bloodthirsty land grabbers from the beginning. And today, here's the issue. To keep it simple, Sharia law is simple. If you're a good Muslim, you live by Sharia. And this is like the women have to cover their heads. And there's arguments about how much to cover them. Many Muslim women just cover the top of their head, but then you get these radicals cover everything. And don't eat pork. Don't own dogs. I think they have trouble with dogs. I can't remember all the laws that they have keeping Ramadan. But you might say, well, Christians have religious laws too. Yeah, they do. Here's the difference. We Christians never say you should take over the government and force everyone in your country to do it. And whenever Christians have tried that, it hasn't gone well. And Jesus didn't do that. Whereas Islam cannot say they're operating properly unless they force their own people to do it. And they force everyone in the country to do it. And wise countries know this, and you can live with Islam if you'll tell them, do what you like, but you're not doing it here. In your little community, you want to play Sharia law, fine. You're never going to affect us as a community. But white liberals, white middle-class liberals who may be the most foolish people on the planet, they think, no, it's Islamophobia if you don't let them do what they want. Well, they're taking over. I want to show you a couple examples from video. That very first one I sent you there, Sunshine, it's short and it's very interesting. It's an Indian Christian talking to Muslims. I think they're in America, but I'm not certain. They could be in Britain. It's hard to tell. But play it when it's ready.
You're a liar. I wouldn't trust you and I hate you as well.
So the point is you won't have a conversation with me because I'm a Christian.
No, I won't believe anything you say because you're a liar. And you're a Christian as well. I hate you for the sake of Allah.
You hate me for the sake of Allah?
I hate you for the sake of Allah.
All right.
I hate you for the sake of Allah. Every Christian, I hate you all for the sake of Allah. Any Jew, any Christian, I hate you all for the sake of Allah.
He hates me for the sake of Allah.
You hate these bastards and the other bastards as well.
Would you kill me if you get a chance?
If we're at war, I will chop your head off. Yeah, Allah guides you. If we're fighting in war, am I supposed to let him kill me? I said, if we are.
No, let's ask this again. Do you hate me?
Yes, I hate you for the sake of Allah.
Who taught you to hate me?
Islam did.
Play that one more time, just so people caught that. It's a conversation between an Indian, obviously an Indian or a Pakistani Christian, and he's arguing with another man who I don't know where he's from.
Pakistan was originally part of India. It's kind of the same thing.
And it's the Muslims. It doesn't matter. But in any case, if you just hit it again, just so everyone can catch that, it's fairly short.
You're a liar. I wouldn't trust you and I have to hate you as well.
So the point is you won't have a conversation with me because I'm a Christian.
No, I won't believe anything you say because you're a liar. And you're a Christian as well. So I hate you for the sake of Allah.
You hate me for the sake of Allah.
I hate you for the sake of Allah.
All right.
I hate you for the sake of Allah. Every Christian, I hate you all for the sake of Allah. Any Jew, any Christian, I hate you all for the sake of Allah.
He hates me for the sake of Allah.
You hate these bastards and the other bastards as well.
Would you kill me if you get a chance?
If we're in war, I will chop your head off. Yeah, Allah guides you. If we're fighting in war, am I supposed to let him kill me? I said, if we are.
No, let's ask this again. Do you hate me?
Yes, I hate you for the sake of Allah.
Who taught you to hate me?
Islam did.
Okay, so is that the majority of Muslims? No, it isn't. I've known many Muslims, thankfully, as a Christian, and them knowing I'm a Christian, and none of them said that to me. However, if they read their Islamic scriptures and really get into it, they potentially could say that to me. Question is, where do you think that guy learned that? He didn't make that up. There are schools that teach this. I remember after 9/11, a friend of mine who went to our church was an FBI agent, and they sent the FBI to talk to just about every doggone Muslim in New York City to interview him. And he would tell stories of going into a home and everyone's nice. They give you tea. They're very polite. Little kids running around saying, kill the Jews. You say the word Jew, they say, kill them. The schools teaching the children in Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Iran, we say have radicalized. We call it Islamism. It's not Islam, it's Islamism. Okay, that's fine, whatever. But the root is evil. And so they do evil. Go ahead.
Well, and we can't. You can say that axiomatically as a Christian because it's not Christian. If it's a contrary religion to the one true religion, it's demonic.
True.
I know that. I don't have to study to know that.
Right.
Right? If they hate Christ,
so you're saying
because he's Christ.
That's a great point. So we know they're demonic, but they're also violent.
Yeah, it's people often want you to justify that claim with their wrong actions in the world and then point to wrong actions that Christians have done. But Christianity gives you a framework to say that Christian should stop behaving like that because it's wrong action. You know what I mean? It's almost circular. The root of Christianity is Jesus, right? We talk about we reviewed the passage last time about the olive tree, the olive bush, and the root being the root of Jesse.
The root is holy.
And the root is holy. And so the devil in his trickery, being the father of lies, wants to make up false religions because we're all religious, whether we like to admit it or not. It's just in our nature to be religious. And so he's making a false religion to try to just play on that natural religious tendency of ours, and the root of it has to be demonic because it's not Jesus at the root.
That's true. So what is unique about Islam then is a question that could come to mind, and I would say it's an Abrahamic false religion, and there's not a lot of those.
No, there's only
3 Abrahamic major religions: Judaism, Christianity, and
I would say only one of them is false, truly.
Yeah, if you do Judaism right, you'll be a Christian. And so it came 600 years plus later after Jesus. And they do copy a lot of Christian doctrine. They just twist it. It kind of like the Pentecostals, name it, claim it, with the over-realized eschatology. where we can't say we're going to be healthy now like we will in the end times, even though we have received that. We've received eternal health in the resurrection. But those who say, well, you can get that now, well, you're going to die. You're not going to get it now. You may get some of it now, but you ain't getting much. And it's an over-realized eschatology. In other words, you want the end times now. In the same way, when the kingdom comes, everyone will be pure. There will be no infidels. But Islam wants to get rid of the infidels right now by the sword. And there's no grace. There's no grace in it. There's no one dying for sins. It's funny that you say it, though, because Christians, evangelical Bible-believing Christians, are becoming so soft in so many places to truth that just today, when I wasn't looking for it but knew I was preparing for this podcast, I saw Megan Basham throw up something about Russell Moore. Did you have that there too? Yeah. And so go ahead and read what she posted.
So for context, Russell Moore, Harvest Church is in fellowship with the Southern Baptist Convention. So, we don't claim Southern Baptists as a denomination, but
or an identity. Well, Southern Baptist actually isn't a denomination; it's a convention, and we're
in fellowship with them. Russell Moore,
they're friends. We're friends.
Is
with them.
Formerly one of the big poobahs, one of the leaders, is on the executive committee and led some other stuff, right? And he's since parted ways. So there was some quote in there where Russell Moore is quoted as saying, the demonization of Islam is not only wrong, but could lead to some very difficult situations in terms of security. So if we were going to confront radical Islam, we're going to have Muslim and Arab partners. And she rightly points out,
Megan
Basham, who's a journalist, Christian journalist, points out exactly what I was just saying. In fact, I took it from her because I didn't know you were looking at this.
Yes.
That demonizing a religion that worships a demon is wrong is like a counterintuitive statement.
It's a tautology.
Yeah.
Which tautology means circular reasoning. And by the way, I'm saying this for Clarence Walker. If you look at our comments from a couple podcasts ago, he encouraged you to keep using as many big words as possible and encouraged our audience to just get smarter about big words, to which I still responded that no, I'd rather use the farmer word. So I'm defining tautology. It means a circular argument. The answer's in the argument. So demonizing a religion that worships demons
can't be wrong.
Can't be wrong.
It's accurate.
Yes.
It's something that's worth demonizing. The word demonizing.
So the only reason that matters is Russell Moore, not just pincushioning him, is he's influential with a lot of people. He represents a lot of people.
There's a
lot of soft evangelicals out there.
Prominent website is Christianity Today.
What
which
a
is
joke!
Fallen from grace.
It used to be the #1 Christian magazine.
I think he at one point was one of the executive directors of that publication.
He still works. I think he is their Grand Poobah right now.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
So
he's fallen down this slope to someday soon end up in rainbow raiments talking about
listen,
talking about two-spirit.
Exactly, two
indigenous elders.
So I have no problem demonizing Islam. I will not demonize every Muslim I've met. And I, again, would say the vast majority of Muslims are not violent and never will be.
Well, and they're just sinners like the rest of us.
They're just like the rest of us. But Islam itself is the problem when it comes to what's going on in Israel right now. There's no other way around it. If Israel was left alone there's people who want to kill them because they're Jews. And this is something people they're not getting. It doesn't matter how much land they give them. There's so many people who are just so ignorant in America saying, well, we need a two-state solution. They don't want a two-state solution. There's something called the Walk of Islam. Have you ever heard of the Walk of Islam? I'm not sure how you spell it, or you could look it up. But the Walk of Islam is the idea that anywhere Islam puts mosques and brings their people now belongs to Muhammad and Allah, and they want the entire world to be the Walk of Israel, and so they're invading the West too, but only differently. In England, they're having a huge problem with Islam because when England joined the EU, the European Union, they took down all the borders. They had the same ideology as apparently Biden's puppet masters, and wanted open borders, and that meant all the Muslims said, well, let's go to Western Europe, and let's take over France, and let's take over the Netherlands, and let's take over, Belgium, let's take over England. And they're doing it. They're taking over cities, and all these people are so liberal in their thoughts, which means secular, means they don't believe in God, and so soft that they're afraid to say, no, you can't do Sharia law here. Now, the French have started to fight it, and to give the French their due, they probably fought it the most, the earliest. They said you can't wear the hijabs or whatever that they wear over their heads. But there's a lot of violence in their cities. The Netherlands are such nice people. They're probably going to all be Muslim soon. The English are in big trouble. Let me show you a video or two. The one that says, here's a breakdown of Islamic invasion. This is just a TikTok video and just a woman giving some data. But she isn't wrong. And this is astounding stuff, if you will. Go ahead and hit that.
The mayor of London is Muslim. The mayor of Birmingham is a Muslim. The mayor of Leeds is Muslim. The mayor of Blackburn is Muslim. The mayor of Sheffield is Muslim. The mayor of Oxford is a Muslim. The mayor of Luton is a Muslim. The mayor of Oldham is a Muslim. The mayor of Rochdale is a Muslim. All of this was achieved by only 4 million Muslims out of the 66 million people in England. Today in England, there are over 3,000 mosques. There are over 130 Sharia courts in England. And there are more than 50 Sharia councils. 78% of Muslim women do not work and receive state support and free accommodation. 63% of Muslims do not work and receive state support and free housing. State-supported Muslim families have an average of 6 to 8 children who all receive free accommodation. Every school in the UK is required to teach about Islam. The number one most common baby name in England is Muhammad. This is not immigration. This is invasion.
Or replacement, I'd say, is better. Not an invasion.
Yeah, invasion implies.
Well, there's so many facts in there that you got to pick up on what she's saying. There's so many Sharia courts, which means there's courts of law under English rule somehow, so they shouldn't be there, but where you can drag a person, obviously Muslims, hopefully dragging Muslims, not non-Muslims, and enforcing laws that aren't the laws of England against people. Because there is no separation between Islam and politics. There's people who say Islamists are political, but true Muslims aren't. That's not true. It's just historically false. Islam has always been a political movement. And then, so you have all these Sharia courts there. Notice the number of people not working. One thing Islam has figured out is that you can ride in on the tails of socialism. And wherever you have liberals, you're going to have people giving you things for doing nothing. You're going to have increased welfare. You're going to have free health care. You're going to have free food. You're going to have free housing. Well, the Muslims quickly figured out we can take over this country. Because all we have to do is come take all their free stuff, live for free, have babies because England doesn't have any babies, and then outvote them. And so what happens in cities when you do that? Well, all of a sudden you have the Muslim calls to prayer going in London. Now you have towns in England where they're forbidding people to ring church bells as a nuisance, where they're arresting people for silently praying Christian prayers, for preaching. They're taking them off the streets. But if you're a Muslim, and these people are so soft, they won't fight it.
Yeah, well, it's not just England. I mean, it's Canada and the U.S. too.
Well, they're trying to. Hit that next video that's down below that, if you would.
Well, remind me, I want to get back at the end of this too then. Since we are a government of the people, by the people,
write it down
for the people,
so you don't forget it. Go ahead.
How then should we think practically about what
We're
the
gonna get to
U.S.'s
that.
response should be to Israel and then to Islam?
Yeah, just jot that down so we don't forget. You ready, Sunshine, with this next one? Because it does matter how we respond. And one of the things I think, by the way, as she's getting that ready, one way to respond is we got to talk about it. We got to stop being wimpy. You can say Islam is evil, but Muslims aren't. You can say some forms of Islam are peaceful, and some do teach peace for real, but they're the minority, and that true Islam is not peaceful. Are you ready? Go ahead. So this is, I don't know if you have any sound there. There's no sound. There's just butts in the air. All I see is butts in the air. Well, if you can get it with the sound, that's fine. So, but if you're looking at the butts in the air, that is not Arabia. This is the streets. I mean, look at that zigzag.
There's just no sound right at that part.
Oh, okay, go ahead, hit it. Wonder why there is no sound there. Oh, yeah, you're right. See the zigzags? It looks like Abbey Road from London. Yeah. A Muslim call to prayer. Some people think it's beautiful. I think it sounds like a dog passing gas because it's disgusting to me. It's called the false prayer. They tell the same prayers every day in order to hopefully be holy, but they're not. Yeah, it sounds like someone vomiting to me when I hear the Muslim. So that's England right there. That's what it's become. Who wants to go to London? Not me. All right, you can turn that off. Enough of this crud. I actually have an extended video that I want us to watch, and we're going to do the stop action. Either Will or I, if we want to say anything, are going to stop. The man talking is not a Christian, but he does have a lot of common sense, and he is English from...
It's a Dougie.
It's Constantine.
Oh, I don't know.
From the guys from Trigonometry. They're pretty cool. I like them. Anyway, hit play of the guy with the, you see the face with the ladies with the black stuff on their face.
Is Islam a religion of peace? Lessons from Uzbekistan.
Konstantin Kisin, that's his name.
Western Europe has been engaged in a raging debate about mass immigration for at least a decade. If you accepted the statement I just made without objection, you have, like most people, swallowed what is at best a polite fiction and at worst a deliberate misframing of the problem. The claim that the debate is about mass immigration is fraudulent on at least two levels. First, while we argue about stopping illegal immigration and keeping legal immigration manageable, the reality is that the concerns most people have are not about the future or even the present. They're about the past. Dig even slightly under the surface of anti-immigration sentiment and you will discover that the core concern for many is not what might happen, but what has already happened. In other words, the debate is not about mass immigration, but about the impact of the immigration that occurred not only in recent years, but sometimes in decades past. Second, the great unsayable in polite society is that not all immigrants are the same. Britain, for example, experienced a wave of Polish and Romanian immigration in the 2000s. Since 2022, millions of Ukrainians fleeing Putin's invasion have been given refuge across the continent. Hundreds of thousands of Hong Kongers have escaped the Chinese Communist Party's crackdown by coming here too. Scour as you might, you will struggle to find any anti-Polish sentiment beyond the very fringes of our societies. There is no need for a debate about preventing societal discrimination against Ukrainians, because no such discrimination exists. Hong Kongers appear to be doing just fine.
Could you stop
the rise
for a
of
minute?
anti-immigration.
So, just to sum up so far, he's saying we have people are saying there's a problem with immigrants coming to Europe, and he's using England as an example, and he's saying we have immigrants coming from Ukraine to flee the war, and we have immigrants coming from Hong Kong to flee the Chinese, and there's zero problem. So he's saying all immigrants aren't the same. So who are the problem immigrants? Well, we already know the answer. Go ahead and hit it.
Parties across Europe is not a response to mass immigration per se. It's a response to the importation of large numbers of people from what even the bravest of our politicians euphemistically call incompatible cultures. To them, the problem is not immigration, it's Islam.
Stop.
There are three broad schools.
I just got to say, we've said this before. I'd say it 100 times. It's not my saying, it's just true. Other people have said it. It's a true thing. It's just true. Culture is upstream of everything else in society. Culture is upstream of government and politics, how you live your life. We already covered on this podcast that the root word of culture is cultus, which actually translates to worship. What you worship affects your society more than anything, and not all cultures are created equal.
That's right.
And they can't coexist. Those coexist stickers are stupid. I forget the British general's name and British brigadier's name that was in charge of India, but it's one of my favorite clash of cultures when he showed up there when India was still a British protectorate, and they were doing sati, where they burn widows on the funeral pyre of the husband alive. So if the husband dies, they burn the living wife on his funeral pyre. He said, we're not doing this anymore, and they said, this is part of our culture. And then when they built a funeral pyre in the center of town, before they were going to have the ceremony, he had his British soldiers build a gallows next to it, and he said, well, it's part of our culture that anyone who does this, we hang on that thing over there. And it's just...
It ended it.
It ended it. There's cultures aren't equal. They're not equal morally. They're not equal before God.
And none of them are perfect except the kingdom of God.
But
some are closer to others in how they compare to the kingdom of God.
And how they compare in things like C.S. Lewis wrote about the Tao,
which is the natural right and wrong that humans seem to know.
Seem to know whether you're Christian or not. You know, the conscience, the God's natural law written on your heart, and so cultures that are more aligned with things like the Tao. If you don't know what that is, read C.S. Lewis's Abolition of Man. Can coexist often and do well.
Yes.
But when you have totally contrary conceptions of what is the thing you're worshiping at the root of your culture, they can't coexist, and therefore they won't coexist well. One has to win, and I think that's what we're about to talk about.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And interesting, a bunch of thoughts come to my mind. One is, I thought, what if you had a bunch of cannibals or headhunters? You know, there was Nagaland in India used to be all headhunters. What if you had them and a bunch of liberal vegetarians together? One culture is going to win. It's probably going to be the headhunters.
Yeah, if your culture, if the ultimate ethic of your culture is you do you and I'll do me, and there's no right or wrong but what you think is right. What I think is right, and I say, well, what I think is right and what I want to do is kill you and eat you.
And cut your head off and shrink it and then eat the rest of you. Yeah.
Then the you do you culture is going to disappear over time.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're hanging out with Buddhists, you're probably all right. But like in America, even every Indian tribe that was here, most of them were not peaceful. You did have the Hopis.
Dot or feather. No, I'm joking.
Dot or feather. These are the feathers. And not every white group of colonizers came was evil, but some were. So the Quakers came and cut deals in Pennsylvania with all. They didn't use any land they didn't buy. Right?
Because they were Quakers.
But then once Pennsylvania was founded, before the United States began, one of Ben Franklin's big complaints about the Quakers was a lot of the other Indians who weren't so nice were killing the Quakers who bought the land from some other Indian. But these other Indian tribes say, we don't care, we take it. So Pennsylvania's militia would have to go out and protect the Quakers who were pacifists, who wouldn't fight, and including George Washington. And Franklin was very mad about that. He said, look, your religion is stopping you from fighting, but other Christians have to go and die to keep you from dying. So the culture of the Quakers would not have survived in the United States if not. And look, you were never going to make peace with the Comanches. I don't care where you lived, and they were nomads. They didn't have a land. If you moved to Texas,
in their ethic, you couldn't own land.
And they would kill you. They would kill anybody, Comanches, and they were really good at it before gunpowder and tanks and cannons I should say. Anyway, so what he's saying here along those lines is there's a culture that's come into England and into Europe in general that's not fitting in well.
It can't coexist.
Doesn't play nice with
Western
others.
Culture.
And in Islam, by the way, when it comes in mass, it doesn't play nice with anybody. This is a historical fact. Even in India, there are a lot of Muslims there, and they are mostly contained and even at times oppressed. And you might say, well, they shouldn't be oppressed. Well, the Indians believe they don't oppress them. They're going to take over, and they will have another Pakistan. Now, I'm not justifying the Hindus. I think the Hindus are in power are not a good culture either. But they're not near as dangerous necessarily as the Islamic ones. But nowhere where Islam becomes a majority is a place anyone who's not a Muslim wants to live, and many who are Muslims don't want to live. UAE, I'd live there. Anyway, let's go on.
Schools of thought on this issue. The progressive response is the head in the sand mantra of diversity is our greatest strength. The slogan, mindlessly repeated, is a proxy for a whole host of dishonesties. First, and for as long as possible, they will pretend that there is no problem. When Islamist terrorism is discussed, they will immediately try to contextualize the debate by talking about far-right violence and other threats. Their concerns are not incorrect in that the far right does have a violent fringe, and our police and security services must remain vigilant in dealing with it. But the fact remains, 75% of MI5's caseload involves Islamist terrorism, with over 90% of the 43,000 people on MI5's terror watch list being Islamist extremists.
MI5 is there
in its
CIA.
actual context, consider that only 6% of people in Britain are Muslim. In other words, Islamist extremism is not only a huge problem, it's a disproportionately huge problem. Second, once people who hold this view are forced to confront some measure of reality and accept the problem exists, they will pivot to blaming causes like poverty, discrimination, alienation, and so on. They will ignore the fact that other groups in our society suffer from these problems and do not engage in terrorism, mass rape, gangs, or sectarian violence. Third, they will immediately accuse anyone who attempts to look for solutions of being racist, Islamophobic, and so on. This package of lies, combined with the reality of the problem itself, has given rise to the second, and in some ways, equal and opposite school of thought. According to this perspective, the problem is not Islamism, it's Islam itself. And naturally, this group is diverse and not easily quantified.
Let's stop
Some
him
are
for a
ex-Muslims.
He's going to make the argument that there's a difference between Islam and Islamism. I don't agree with him necessarily, but I know what he's saying. He's saying that there are a lot of Muslims who won't kill you, and never will, and I agree. But Islamism, you're just adding another ism to Islam. It's really saying a belief in Islam. Islam plus the word ism just makes it more Islami. But he also did mention rape gangs, and that's something I want to point out because a lot of people don't know this. If you watch ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, NPR, CNN, MSNBC, you will never know that there are rape gangs who are Pakistani men, Muslims. They come from Pakistan and sometimes other Muslim countries, and they believe that any woman who is not covered like a Muslim is therefore an infidel, and you are allowed by Sharia law to rape her, and it's okay to rape her. And so what they've been doing is they've been and that's Islamic, right? So they've been what they called them grooming gangs. A nice way to say they'll go to the poor sections of England and they'll find young ladies and they'll befriend them, and so get them boyfriends and whatnot, and then they'll begin to have gangs of men who rape them. And this isn't just once in a while. It's a huge scandal because the government turns a blind eye because they're all a bunch of softy liberals, and they say no. Muslims don't rape more than others and all this other stupid stuff, but it's really true that they do, over in England at least. And he's saying that out loud. He's not in the majority in England, obviously, of the media. So now he's going to talk about the distinction between Islam and Islamism. I think it's a distinction in degree. It's not a big deal, but anyway, hit it.
Those who have dealt with the reality of Islamist extremism and violence, like Gad Saad, who says, there is no radical Islam, there's simply Islam. This is, incidentally, also the view of Islamists themselves. They claim that there is only one way to be a Muslim, which is to seek to impose Islamic values on the whole world, introduce Sharia, and subjugate non-believers and those of other faiths. If you think I'm exaggerating their intentions, you probably haven't read enough Islamist literature, such as this or this. To this camp, the fact that most Muslims are decent, peaceful people is irrelevant because, to this view, they are so in spite of the teachings of their religion. Furthermore, many will argue that some moderate Muslims are only moderate in the sense that they're unwilling to engage in acts of extremism, but support and excuse those who do. As evidence, they will cite worrying surveys such as this one suggesting that British Muslims are more likely to view Hamas positively than negatively. It goes without saying that hiding amongst honest critics of the doctrines of Islam are garden variety bigots who simply hate Muslims for being different, foreign and alien.
Could you stop him
but
for a
this
minute?
does not mean...
And maybe back it up 30 seconds. He said that most Muslims support Hamas in Britain.
And I wanted to bring that up earlier. I've seen polls of this in U.S. Muslims too. It might be true. I'll take it at face value. It's true that the majority of Muslims in the U.S. are nonviolent, but I don't think it's proven out to be true when polled their opinion that most Muslims in the U.S. don't support, at least philosophically, Muslims who do commit violence in the East.
That was exactly right. All the studies show that in America and in other countries, even countries where they're nonviolent, you'll see the vast majority, if asked, do you support Sharia law? Yes. Do you support the death penalty for adultery? Yes. Do you support the killing of LGBTQ people for being that way? Yes. We as Christians oppose sexual sin and have a reputation of doing so, and rightly earned. But we don't ever believe you should kill someone for sin. We believe that our Savior was already killed for that very purpose in our place. But Islam says, we'll just kill you. And most Muslims would agree with that, even peaceful Muslims. That's what Will's point is, and I agree 100%. Okay, go ahead and hit it.
Many will argue that some moderate Muslims are only moderate in the sense that they're unwilling to engage in acts of extremism, but support and excuse those who do. As evidence, they will cite worrying surveys such as this one suggesting that British Muslims are more likely to view Hamas positively than negatively. It goes without saying that hiding amongst honest critics of the doctrines of Islam are garden variety bigots who simply hate Muslims for being different, foreign and alien. But this does not mean that believing the doctrines of Islam are liable to produce violence and oppression makes you a bigot, despite what those in the first camp would like you to believe. The problem I've always had with this argument, though, is that there are many countries around the world which are majority Muslim, and some with large Muslim minorities like Singapore, which appear to have dealt with Islamist extremism far better than we have in Western Europe. I saw this myself in Uzbekistan, where I lived between 86 and 1990, and again when I returned there last week. This is why, while remaining open-minded to different perspectives and claiming no expertise, I lean towards the third camp.
Stop right now.
People who believe that religion...
Okay, thank you. You're doing a great job, Sunshine. This is beginning to answer your question, Will. Will's question is, the final one is, how should we think of Islam when voting? How do we handle Islam currently? What should we do with our laws? And this doesn't go all the way, but what he's going to say is there is a country with a lot of Muslims in it called Uzbekistan, which handles the Muslims very well, or Singapore, which is a city-state, which handles Muslims very well, and it has Muslims. And he's about to give you some examples. So this takes us, and I'll give you the short answer in advance. They recognize Sharia law as a problem, and they say you're not going to do Sharia law here, but you can be a Muslim. So go ahead and hit it.
Extremism is a problem which has a tried and tested solution. My latest trip to Uzbekistan is a case in point. Islam is everywhere. The most prominent contemporary and historical buildings are mosques and madrasas. It is not uncommon to be awakened in your hotel at 5 a.m. by the Islamic call to prayer. Many men wear skull caps called tibitekas, while women dress modestly. Some sport headscarves and traditional outfits which cover the full length of their arms and legs. Popular boys' names here include Muhammad, Mustafa, Ali, Muslim, Abdullah, and Ibrahim. The country's first president after the fall of the Soviet Union was called Islam Karimov. But not Islam is everywhere too. Alcohol is sold in shops and many restaurants, not just for foreigners, but for anyone who wants to buy it. Many, and I would say most, girls and women wear jeans, trousers, knee-length skirts, and other secular clothing, especially in the cities. I saw a woman in one of those black bags, one woman tells us in a disapproving tone. You could see her face, but that was it. This is not our way. Traditional Uzbek women's attire is a kaleidoscope of colors and does not cover a woman's hair. What about them, I ask, pointing to a gaggle of young women in hijabs. That's not ours either. They brought that crap here from Turkey, she says with a dismissive wave of the hand. The only place you'll find veils in Uzbekistan is museums. Burqas are banned in public places. Don't get me wrong, this isn't Venice Beach. You won't see crop tops, bikinis, and vulva-hanging leggings here. But neither will you see those in Armenia, a Christian country not far from Uzbekistan, where I spend a lot of time. It's a traditional society thing, not a Muslim thing. Tourists wearing summer dresses, shorts, skirts, and other less conservative attire are safe and treated with respect. The few churches and synagogues you'll find in Uzbekistan are protected and well maintained. Most Christians and Jews have left for America, Europe, or Israel, but not because of persecution or oppression. When the USSR collapsed, opportunities for the well-educated dried up, and they left in search of a better life, as many did from non-Muslim Soviet countries too. I'm an Armenian, our driver tells us. I've lived here since 1994. We have no ethnic issues here. At Easter, my Muslim friends come to my house to celebrate with me. For their holidays, I go round to theirs. At every opportunity, I broach the subject of extremism with what turns out to be unnecessary sensitivity. There is no serious problem with radical Islam here because the people in charge understand the threat and are prepared to deal with it.
Stop it right there.
It's simple. If you want...
So let's answer the question a little bit now. You said...
Sounds like our buddy Jack Bowser's axiom that it's all leadership, baby.
Yes. And plus he also would add, if you all just treat each other with respect, you won't have a problem. And we should treat each other with respect. But that... For American liberal and even the American woke mind, to treat each other with respect is to not disagree out loud, to validate, to even say Islam is equal to Christianity. You can believe Islam is equal to Christianity, but then to make a society where people who disagree with you are rude for saying, no, I don't agree with you, you're wrong, that's the problem. And he even said that. He said, I didn't have to be sensitive. I can bring it up. I remember traveling to Israel. One of the things that struck me in Israel was it's like a Western nation, but you can talk about religion there openly. Everyone talks about it. And I didn't realize how restrained I am as an American. You just got to be careful. Don't talk about it because Americans don't. But over there, they talk about them and they all disagree. Most of them are agnostics, but you have a lot of, obviously, Hasidic, there is a good percentage of very Orthodox Jews, and there's a lot of Muslims around because there are a lot of Israelis who are Muslim, and there's Americans around. And you can just talk about Christianity, you can talk about the Jews, you can talk about anything. They're not offended. But when you start to say, it's offensive to say, I think Islam is wrong, obviously if I go to a Muslim and I'm talking to him one-on-one, which I many times have, I don't lead with, Islam is wrong.
You're of your father, the devil.
But I have had very straight conversations about Jesus is the only way. I sat in a Muslim's house, at the chief Muslim in a village, and I told him Jesus was the way, and he told me that he could respect Jesus as a way, but as far as he was concerned, everyone's religion was fine, and they were all paths to God. He wasn't even a good Muslim. He sounded like an American, a coexist guy. Okay, I disagreed with him. He disagreed with me. He did not pull out a scimitar and cut my head off, and I didn't jump up and call him an infidel and run out of the house. We had tea, and it was nice, and there was no problem. But you have to have that from the top. So one of the things I would say in the United States is we have to get rid of Sharia law as allowed. There should not be allowed by our laws any Sharia courts. None. What you do inside your mosque, provided you're not breaking American laws of abusing people, it's your business. But you should have no Sharia courts where you can bring a woman in and say you weren't dressed properly and we're going to physically punish you, take your money. She should be able to go to an American policeman and say, they're forcing me to do something I don't want to do, and we should say, no, you're not allowed to do that. And so no Sharia law ever will be instituted, no Sharia courts. There are places in America, why do we have Ilhan Omar constantly in our face, who's a Muslim who hates Americans and hates America and hates Christianity, and she's Somali Muslim? Because there's a lot of Somalis living in a place they can all vote for her. Well, trust me, they're trying to get their Sharia laws in. They shouldn't be allowed. No Sharia law ever. Forget it. And I think that will do it mostly, if you do that. Also, don't make them different from Christianity. If we are not, there should be no accommodation for Muslim prayers in the government places unless you're going to accommodate everybody's. just like they do to us Christians, right? You can't have walla, and then everyone falls down, butts in the air, facing east in the middle of whatever you're doing. You're like, sorry. And you should be able to fire people who can't live with that. And you say, it's against my religion. Well, your religion doesn't fit with our culture then. You know, this is a free country. I don't have to hire you if in the middle of workplace you're going to fall around doing la 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 with your butt in the air. Just like you'd fire a Christian if he started speaking in tongues in the middle of a business meeting. You're like, hey, you got to go. I don't know. What are your thoughts? I'd say you ought to be careful about electing a Muslim, which is why I didn't want to elect Barack Hussein Obama, who called himself a Christian, and people would yell at you saying, I don't think he's a Christian. I still don't think he's a Christian. I don't think he's a Muslim, but I think he's Muslim friendly.
Yeah.
Let me make it worse. So just today, and I don't know what's happened 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now when this comes out, a guy from in a Muslim has been nominated as the Democrat representative in New York City, which is still the most important city in the world, in my mind. And his name is Zohran Mamdani. Now, to win in the last, ever since Giuliani and Bloomberg, to win in New York City, all you got to do is have a D by your name. So right now he's the favorite to win. He is both an open socialist and a Muslim, which they come on the same coattail, right? Open socialist and very much a Muslim. He's promising to get rid of privately owned grocery stores by creating government-owned grocery stores, and that won't have to pay rent and don't have to pay overhead, and everyone, so food will be cheap. He's promising to force rent controls on everybody, and he's all these socialist dream things. He also happens to be a Muslim, and he may become the mayor of New York City. London is lost because they've had too many Muslim mayors. There's no way around it. There's too many Muslim mayors. And so could you elect a Muslim in America? Yes, provided that Muslim abides by the laws of the United States and doesn't put any Sharia. Look at it this way. What if a Catholic got elected and he made it a law that everyone had to, in his town, had to respect praying the rosary? That's Sharia law. Everyone in our town, in our area, has to respect this. And you think, well, they're not going to get that through in America. Trust me, they're working on it. There was a town in Texas that was recently kind of debunked where they bought an entire area and they're trying to build a town that's completely Muslim so they can have complete Sharia law. That it's not going to be contained. They want all of Texas. And it's not the people, it's the religion. It's the walk of Islam. Think about this. In New York City, I was there in 9/11 in Jersey when 19 Muslims, no, it wasn't George Bush and it wasn't an inside job, all you pointy-headed wackos. When 19 Muslims killed 3,000 Americans in New York City. And now the same people have just nominated a crazed socialist Muslim to be the doggone mayor. The Muslims will look at that all over the world as we won because they look at it as the walk of Islam. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, I do have some, I'll call them 30,000 foot view. Rather than down in the weeds, what I would say are fundamental ideas.
Fundamentalist ideas.
That I think are inescapable. And they push me to some thoughts about government that I think we disagree on, but if you could let me get some of the fundamentals out before we disagree on the details.
I'll distract myself by taking
before
notes.
we disagree on the details, let me start with the high view. The government, particularly legislation of laws, is a religious act. Period. It can't not be. Okay? Laws fundamentally instruct you what you should not do and enforce them with force. Enforce them with guns, with guys that will come and stop you if you do something.
That's right.
The word should not do is morality.
That's
the
right.
only thing that government does in principle is legislate morality. You can't detach legislating laws from moral value systems.
Clarification, not disagreement. Clarification. That said, sometimes the morality is breaking the law. For example, it's not immoral to turn right from the shoulder, but somebody thinks it manages traffic better, so to break the law is immoral, but the law itself is not moral. So some laws are based on morality. Thou shalt not kill, or thou shalt allow abortion. They'd say it's moral to have abortions, and those are moral matters. Whether or not you can cross without your turn signal is not a moral issue.
Correct.
But breaking the law becomes a moral issue.
That's why I'm starting up here before we get into the nuance of actual daily application.
I was up there with you.
So we're up
but
here.
To say that the law itself is moral, there is a distinction there.
In philosophy, when you're using words like ought and should, those are moral words.
Yes.
Right? What I would do, what I could do, are not necessarily moral. But when I say what one should do or what one ought to do,
obligation
is a moral. And establishing morality requires religion. The word religion comes from religio, which means to reconnect. You're connecting with the ultimate reality of the universe. You have to decide what ultimate reality is to make a decision about what one ought to do.
So we both agree axiomatically that you can legislate morality, and you do legislate morality.
You do. You are, whether you think you are or not.
So culture is
saying you should not steal.
Right.
Is establishing a moral system.
Or to say two men can get married is establishing a moral system.
Is establishing a moral system. Okay. So it's inescapable, principally in my mind, to establish laws on the grand scheme apart from some sort of higher level
morality,
which puts it in the camp of religion. Even the atheists don't realize they're being religious, but they're being religious when they come up with moral systems.
Because you're saying if humans behave one way, they are
right,
doing something intrinsically right or
good
wrong.
or bad, right?
Okay.
And so you have to establish good or bad.
Okay.
And so then I say, if that is true, then I have to say, well, whose morality am I trying to establish? And I want to establish the morality of the one true living God. And this is where I get the aversion to forcibly trying to make people be Christian through law. I don't want to do that. And the reason I don't want to do that is I don't think God wants us to do that.
Agreed.
If I thought God wanted us to do that, then I'd say...
Then you'd be a Muslim.
Then we'd be doing that.
Then you'd be a Muslim.
Right. And I don't think the one true living God actually wants us to do that. But I think the one true living God does want us to have certain laws, like anti-abortion laws, or like you can't murder your brother. Cain can't murder Abel. He doesn't want Cain to be able to murder Abel. And we just covered I
don't think anyone who's listening has a problem.
I'm just establishing my thought process.
Next step.
It reminded me we covered the Noahic covenant a few weeks ago. We talked about how the establishment of government,
thou shalt not murder,
that by man's blood,
yes,
if he sheds man's blood by man's hands,
which requires a society decision, because the dead man can't kill the guy who killed him.
Right. And so that makes me want to assess things like Sharia. Is like, this is how I think as a voter, not necessarily how I would build a government from scratch, but I think like, does God want Sharia law? No, I don't think God wants Sharia law, and He wouldn't want Sharia law if you made it a Christianized Sharia law either, because you already pointed out to Jesus's ethic in the Gospels, and so I don't know if any of that's helpful. That's just what was in my brain.
Well, but you could even add another level. Let's say it's not Sharia law. Let's say it's a good law, laws that aren't burdensome. laws that even most Americans would agree with. You can't have two sets of laws. One of them has to trump the other set. And so the Muslim wants Sharia to trump them all. It's the camel's nose in the tent to start a Sharia court. The goal is to get Sharia, everyone under the Sharia court, including the English Christians. They don't just want a Sharia court for Muslims. That's how they start. The goal is Sharia for everyone. And either English law is going to trump or Sharia law is going to trump. And only one, there's nothing but confusion if there's two sets of laws.
Right. And I guess my thought was just going back to, I'm of the age where like my entire life is in the secular era. And I think often Christians get distracted by this idea that like you can have a neutral government.
No, you can't.
You can't. There's no such thing as neutrality.
There's no such thing as that's right.
When you're establishing oughts and shoulds, which is what governments do.
I'm trying to figure out where we disagree, because that's the problem with our education system is they think, well, we can have a neutral education that doesn't favor anything. Well, it's an anti-Christian education. It has to be an anti-Christian one.
Well, Christ says you can't serve more than one master.
And if they say the government's not allowed to do Christian, then I think the government shouldn't be allowed to do schools. But that's, again, a should, and no one cares what I think. But I think our founding fathers would be on my side. But in any case, let's let...
Well, where we disagree is I think principally, me starting up here and coming down, thinking about the legislation of morality as a religious act fundamentally.
Of course it is.
A lot of people would then put me in the camp of Christian nationalism, and that's why I think it's a weird term because it's so undefined. It's a very wide range of people. So I agree with you that I don't want Christian Sharia law, if that's what you think of when you think of Christian nationalism. But I do think that you can't escape the fact that you're Christian when thinking about government policy.
Well, no, you shouldn't. And actually, we agree. I think that I often wish that the founding fathers had said the providence that we keep referring to is the Judeo-Christian God, and no laws shall be made to force you to worship him, but no laws will be made based on any other religion.
Yes, that would have been nice.
That would have been nice.
Clear.
And that's what they assumed.
That's what they meant.
That's what they meant
it.
because they didn't have any other options.
They were all Presbyterians.
Well, not only that, they knew that Islam came and took over Spain for 9 centuries. They knew the Ottoman Empire. They knew the pirates of the Caribbean were Muslims. They were not these cool Johnny Depp characters who just liked rum and spoke with English accent. They were Muslims. And Jefferson knew that Islam was a problem, and he killed them all.
And when they made that, if you don't know what the anti-establishment clause is, it's that, the government will establish no religion. I can't remember it, paraphrasing. It's the separation of church and state that everybody refers to, which those words are not in there.
No respect of religion.
The anti-establishment clause in, we talk about extra biblical writing outside the Bible, and extra constitutional writing. So they wrote a bunch of stuff not in the Constitution, the same people.
Yeah.
They were referring to establishment of Christian denominations.
That's right. They didn't want the Presbyterians to stop the Baptists from starting Rhode Island.
Right. And at the time of the signing of the Declaration, something like 6 or 7 of the 13 colonies had state established religions.
Oh, yeah. In fact,
they didn't think that states couldn't establish a governmental or like an official religion of the state. They didn't want a federalized.
But even so, under the federalized, since states have to follow the federal government, those states could not force people to be in those religions either.
Correct.
And these are people who just come off, they don't like Rome. There's no way around it. They didn't like the Roman Catholic tradition. They saw
forced down their throat.
Their grandparents in Europe all grew up with that fight of Protestantism and the English church being the state church and Roman church. And they were also saying, we're not going to have a Roman church. We're not going to have a Church of England. You're not going to tell us that we can't have our Whitfields and our Wesleys. You're going to be free to be Christian or Jewish any way you want. They didn't say Jewish, but Christian any way you want, or not at all. But they had no concept of all religions
laws
being equal,
or of laws apart from
nature's God.
Yeah,
and they were appealing to something called natural law.
Yes,
which isn't Christian law, by the way, but it is natural law, and it's the Tao. You talked about the idea.
The Christian God is the God of nature too,
which they would say, which they agreed.
So it wasn't even separated.
There was once a Supreme Court ruling that said we are a Christian nation.
It was like 1956 or something.
And I think it's a good thing. But so I don't think we disagree on that either. I think Robert, or as far as I know, better historians than me will comment and fix everything we're saying. But John F. Kennedy himself, one of his greatest barriers was he was a Catholic. And I think he set an idea by putting America at peace that was bad for your generation and mine. Is he said, look, my Catholicism won't influence the way I govern. To which I'd say, that's a bad idea. I want your Catholicism to influence your governing, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense to me.
Or otherwise you don't believe it. I just covered with a bunch of guys last night that the Bible equates everywhere as belief to obedience and unbelief to disobedience.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to let your Catholicism influence how you act at all, then you're not a Catholic.
Then you're a fake.
Yeah, it's like you don't actually believe it then.
So yeah, anyway, let's move on. Let's let Constantine finish his part of the discussion.
There's a great pastoral joke out there, again from Doug Wilson, though. He's joking about all these Christian politicians that promise on the campaign trail, I won't let my Christianity influence how I behave in office, I promise. And he said, and then they get caught in office driving around with a hooker doing cocaine in a convertible, and they're like, I told you I wouldn't let my Christianity influence how I behaved.
Yes.
I think that's funny.
Yes, in another generation, when Moscow, Idaho turns rebellious, we'll find that he'll learn what the Puritans learned. But I still like him. Go ahead.
Want to pray? Go for it. If you want to cover your hair, that's your choice. I don't do either, a guide tells us. The rules are clear. You can do what you want, but if you want to work for the government, you can't wear a headscarf, and the men must shave their beards, she adds. My obvious joke about hipsters gets the polite smile it deserves. It seems that particular trend has yet to reach Uzbekistan. Later, we're told about a father who sent his daughter to school with her hair covered. He got a big fine. As the conversation winds on, I learned something relevant and important for us here in Europe. I'm a Muslim, a woman in a cafe tells me, her face filled with worry. What's happening in Afghanistan? It's crazy. They are our neighbors, and we do not want that here. I consider lightening the mood by accusing her of Islamophobia, but decide against it. To women here, this is no laughing matter. Their Afghan sisters across the border are forced to cover themselves from head to toe, denied access to work and education, and can only travel outside the home with a male chaperone. She recounts a story of some Islamists who were let out of prison in Uzbekistan. They started some trouble, but thank God our security services dealt with them. You cannot let extremists flourish. From your lips to God's ears, I think to myself. Perhaps one day we in the West will have leaders with the courage to understand such simple realities as well. If you enjoyed these videos, you should know that they're...
So, I think he's reasonable. He's not a Christian, as far as I know. I don't know what he is. But I think he's reasonable. Even though he calls them Islamists instead of Islam, I don't care. He's reasonable. If you understand the religion, and you have to realize it's a culture that's against you, you got to do something about it. And Islam is the problem in Israel. There's no way around it. By the way, on this guy, we were going to do some Bible study. We're running out of time, but I do want to hit you up with one other thing. Since this Zoran Mamdani, you might want to look him up. Zoran Mamdani. He was a rapper, and his mother works for Disney or something, and directed a movie with him. And he's very likable and appealing, except for the fact that he's a disgusting socialist and a Muslim who wants to enforce his weirdness on the rest of the world. He said that to globalize intifada was just simply a cry of it wasn't about violence, it was a cry of the oppressed or something like that. So I go on Grok and I asked Grok outright. I said, look, Grok being an AI form, I said, listen, is Zoran Mamdani a supporter of violent Islam? And it gave me this huge answer of pretty much said, I'm not going to say he is. It said, well, you have this, and this. And then I tried asking it, you can talk to this thing. So I asked it another way, and another way, and another way. And finally, I singled out this globalized infantata idea. I said, what's infantata, right? What is that? And it said, I said, if you were Hamas, is infantata violent? Yes. What it means is we're going to kill all the Jews and get them out of Palestinian land. And to Iran, is it? Yes, it's violent. I said, to violent Islamic people, it's violent. Yes. Okay, good. So when he said globalize infantata, and then he also says he didn't mean it was violent, but to the Hamas guy, globalize infantata means get the whole globe to hate Israel, right? Grok's agreeing with me. And I said, okay, let's go another direction. Let's talk odds, like I'm going to place a bet. And then I asked it, what are the odds that
Zoran Mamdani,
when he says globalize infantata, that he means he would approve of violence? And it gave me this calculation. It says, well, if you're going to be betting money, and it kind of went into its Vegas mode, it says it's 3-2 odds that most all people who say globalize infantata, they would go with violence if they're Muslim because of stats. And so they said if you're putting your money on it, you have a 60% better chance of winning if you put on the idea that this guy would be behind violence done by Hamas to the Jews. And I'm like this is hilarious. I got to argue with AI a certain way, and even AI gives in. It was trying to not take a side. Then all of a sudden, okay, well, if you're putting money on it, don't bet that he's for peace in Israel. He pretty much wants the Jews wiped out. That's the safe money. And so really the issue in Israel right now is Islam. There's no other, that's the immediate issue. It just is. Now I want to, end on a spiritual note. I realize that people who have what we'd call a replacement theology, or something that they don't like that word, but they still believe it, that ethnic Israel is nothing anymore. They're most of the mills. They would say, I get that they would say it's just another country. And I get that I disagree with that. And I get that you could be a good born-again Christian and a member of Harvest and hold that position, and I don't mind. I'm not going to get mad. If you want to have the debate, we've had it here. If you want to have it personally, if I have time, it would be a luxury to do it because I don't think our faith centers on it. But I do believe that it's spiritual. I believe there is the Jews have been the spiritual enemy of the devil. Here's where I think the dispensationalists are correct. Though I don't go with their scheme on the whole, I think where they're correct is Satan hates the Jews. And he does not like the promises God made to the Jews, and he doesn't want them to fulfill those promises. Just like he hates Christians.
I'm blanking on the verse. You're going to know it. Doesn't it say that the devil hates the mother? Isn't there a metaphor in the Bible where Israel is compared to the mother of Jesus, and the devil?
You're probably thinking of the very center of Revelation is a woman gives birth to a baby, and the dragon, Satan, comes to consume the baby, cannot consume the baby, so he chases the woman's children. And she has 12 stars on her head, I think. So she's Israel. She gives birth to Jesus, cannot get him. He flies up to heaven, so he goes after the Jews, is the picture. That's the center of Revelation. And if Revelation is a chiastic construction, Clarence, chiastic means
A-B-A.
It means A-B. It could mean A-B-A. It could mean A-B-C-A. It could be A-B-C-C-B-A. But it's a construction. It's like a sandwich or a mirror image where it has an idea and it normally comes back to that idea. In the middle, it parallels. And so
I learned that from our buddy Isaac.
That's right. So Revelation is probably a chiastic construction, which was one of our questions in an early podcast from Isaac, because I preached Revelation and didn't mention a chiastic construction, nor would I. Maybe if I did it again, because
it's unnecessary.
You'd have to repeat it every single week to get it across. And anyway, it doesn't matter. But what it does mean, though, is that that's the central motif of the book, because that's the middle. It's the very middle of the book. I'm pretty sure that's chapter 12 of Revelation. I have to look it up. But, yeah, so it's spiritual, though. If Satan can kill off all the Jews, it was the same as killing Jesus. He's trying to destroy God. He hates him. He hates God's progeny. He hates righteous people. Peter says to us Christians, behold, the devil prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. It is only the protection of God that's kept the Jews alive. Certainly not their holiness, because on the whole, they're not a godly people. It's only a minority that hold to Christ, and only a minority of the others who even care about the God of Israel. The others really are culturally loyal.
I would say on a pragmatic note, even if we throw out all the Christian stuff, even if you don't, total dispensationalism, you don't think there's anything special about Israel. I just think in all practical measures, too, it was a good move. Like, it reestablished peace through strength. It has a lot of good practical implications for Ukraine and Russia and Taiwan and China.
I mean,
the bombing of Iran.
Oh, I didn't know you were going to the bombing of Iran.
I'm just thinking about. It
was a great idea.
Yeah, I don't see how even if you look at it completely a-religiously, I think it's pragmatically.
If you'll
good
agree,
decision.
like we do, I think that the mullahs of here's something I didn't mention. The mullahs of Iran believe. So the Islamic end of times goes like this: Jesus comes back. They believe in that. But then another dude comes back. I think they call him the 12th or the 13th Imam. It's kind of like the perfect priest or prophet. And then the great whatever of goodness happens after that. So Jesus is kind of second place. But it's brought on by chaos that comes from physical destruction. Iran believes that to die is a win. Iran, after the 79 mess, made, 1,000 martyrs out of children. Little children, like your daughter's age, a little older, maybe give her till 5 or 6, so they can understand that if you die in the cause of Allah, little 10-year-olds, probably 11-year-olds, you're going straight to heaven. And we have these minefields that need to be cleared. And they sent their own children out to blow up. There's a reason why on October 7th, one guy calls up his dad and said, I just killed a Jew with my bare hands. He really believes he just earned heaven. And that is the thinking of Hamas, most all the Palestinians, because their schools, what if Israel's smart, they won't let Palestinians educate their own children, because this is what they teach them. And you may say, well, that's oppressive. I don't care if it's colonial or oppressive. If you don't want them killing you, you got to stop them. And the mullah, and that's what Hamas believes, that's what Hezbollah believes, that's what Al-Qaeda believes. They believe that to die is a win. Just think of, there was that old story, the Muslim American who said, look, I'm a peaceful guy, and I know what happened 9/11 was bad, but I want you to know that as an American, I'm a fellow American, I'm not upset. And then someone said to him, so what is it you think about 9/11? He says, well, it was a great tragedy, a great loss of life. We lost 19 of our best men. Which I don't know if you caught that. He meant the guys who took over the planes. But that wasn't about poverty. These people had the money to come to America, get college educations, they had good jobs, and then they killed themselves. George Bush did not engineer it, idiots. And the earth isn't flat. They did it because they believed that's a good thing. The mullahs don't care if they send people to death. They don't. If they get a nuke, they will use it. If they get 10, and they probably won't use the first one, they probably want about a dozen of them. And what happens on Earth if a dozen nukes, even if they can't shoot them straight and they land in Turkey, what happens? First, all you greenies out there worried about global warming, you're in for it. What happens if some other country with nukes like Pakistan, India, North Korea, the United States, China, Russia decides, well, maybe that was towards us, and they start firing? Only people without brains like Candace Owen or Tucker Carlson would say it's a bad idea to get involved. This is just like Iraq. We're going to get in an endless war. Shut up. You're stupid. You got to stop these crazy. In fact, take out all the crazy people. I would rather they all convert to Christ. But if they won't, why don't we go capture all their mullahs, preach the gospel to them? If they say no, we throw them in a pit and then leave them in the pit for the rest of their life. I mean,
because I don't know that Jesus would want us to do that.
I think he would. It's called protection. It's called protecting the innocent. Do you want your daughter to die? Your children? That's not fair, but you know what it is, your children to die because this guy told you, I'm going to kill all you infidels. I hate the United States. You're the great Satan. I'm killing all you people. And you didn't do anything when he had a gun? Do you think that is what Jesus wants?
No, I agree with that.
They have a gun to the head of the world.
I think it was a morally good decision, right? I mean,
but in any case, I think it's spiritual to hate Jews. I think people who hate Jews are spiritual. Why is there anti-Semitism on the rise in America? The devil wants you to hate Jews. Bless those he blesses, curse those he curses. Do not curse the Jews. You don't have to treat them differently. If they do wrong, arrest them, put them in jail. But do not hate the Jews. You're a fool if you do. You're working with the devil. And I am pro-Israel, and I do think spiritually that's the safer ground. You can disagree as a Christian and still be saved, and that's fine with me. Okay, we're not going to have time for anything else because I have to go to a baptism, which is awesome.
That is awesome.
And I don't want to be late. Otherwise, I would take the next half hour because I had a great idea for an angle here.
Write it down.
It was kind of time-bound here.
Yeah, okay.
But that's all right. It doesn't matter.
Well,
I'm done
everybody.
ranting and raving. So that's our 2 weeks on Israel. It's done. If you don't like it, we're not talking about it again unless somebody blows something up again, I guess. I don't know.
And I just saw today that it seems like ceasefire negotiated between Iran and Israel for now.
Yeah, for now. For now.
See you, everybody.